Welcome to the Art of Black Miami podcast, organized by Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. Our stories introduce emerging and experienced artists who make Miami an exciting place to live and visit. I'm Rosie Gordon-Wallace, curator and arts advocate. Miami is my home since the 1970s. My passion is cultivating the vision and talent of contemporary artists from the Caribbean diaspora, artists of color, and immigrant artists. Many cultures and languages come together to shape the character of Miami. Today we introduce you to Shawna Moulton, an artist influenced by the diverse cultures of her childhood in Bahamas and Jamaica. The experience of motherhood has transformed her work, increasing her awareness of generations that came before her and the importance of representing Caribbean heritage in her art. Good morning, Shawna. I have been enamored by your accomplishments and the quality and diligence of your work. So it's an absolute joy to share you with our audience today and to ask you to tell us, where were you born?
I love to. I love being here. Thank you so much for having me. So I was born in Freeport, Bahamas. But my parents are Jamaican. They just happened to have met, fell in love, and had me in the Bahamas. And then they did move back to Jamaica, where I spent the first 10 years of my life.
So you're Jamaican, Bahamian.
Yeah. Jamaican, Bahamian, yes. American, this child of the diaspora. Yeah.
All of these hyphenated labels and personalities that we have. So tell me a little bit about this consciousness and path as an artist. When did you realize that you're an artist?
It's an interesting question. I realized the first time I wanted to make art, and I would consider that me becoming an artist. And that moment was always in Jamaica, and I'd walk by the streets. And I remember one day there was a mural on this wall I'd walked by like my whole life. I stopped and I looked at it, and I wasn't really sure what I was seeing, but I was like, this is magical. One day it was a blank, and now I'm looking at an image, and I think it was an image of people dancing, promoting some, pasa pasa dance. And I was just like amazed of the work, and I didn't know the artist, but just knowing that wall had been blank my entire life, to see it was very magical. And that was the moment where I was like, I want to do that. I want to create that.
Where in Jamaica?
So this is in Kingston. 16 Shattered Lane. Shout out to my whole block in Kingston. I always remember my first address. So that's Gunson Spring. That was the area I was raised. I went to Tarrant's Primary with the all green uniform. I remember Rastaman would be like, what kind of, he'd say labor right president, or because of the color of the green. Yes. Like I didn't understand those things, but I do remember my time in Jamaica, my upbringing very vividly with color and music and the people and just the attitude and everything. I have this child view of the world, and everything was so magical. And I still run on that energy, I still run on looking at the world how I did when I was a child.
What you're describing is a diverse cultural experience, personal experience. Yeah. How has this influenced your life?
Currently, this is what I'm talking about in my practice, and just every day where I meet someone and they ask me where I'm from, right. And I have to go back to this. Well, I was born in the Bahamas. I was raised in Jamaica. My parents are Jamaican, but I've been in America for 20 years, an American citizen. So I'm still trying to create that summary of all the cultures and experience I've had the pleasure of being a part of. When I go to Jamaica, I feel very American. My family, they give me a hard time. They call me Yankee. They're like, oh, you don't know anything about this. And I'm like, no, I remember washing up my uniform with my hands in a bucket, walking to school, getting on the bus. In Jamaica, children are very independent. And on my visits, sometimes I'm like, hey, where's that child's parents? But I remember that was me. They gave me the sense that I was smart or I had to be smart to navigate the world. I would get on a bus and a taxi to go to school. I was miles away, and I think about it, and it's such a culture shock for me now in America with a daughter of my own, but that's how I was raised.
And so are there any key elements that this cultural upbringing has informed your life?
I'm thinking about culture, thinking about family, thinking about my grandparents, my ancestors, and everything that led me to be here right now talking to you. And, me creating my daughter. So yes. I want to know myself. So when she has these questions, I'll be able to have some kind of an answer for her.
Your daughter, whose name is?
Zion,
is Jamaican, Trinidadian, Tobagan.
Yes.
And Guyanese. And so she's going to be as culturally diverse as you are. Yes. This is amazing. I'm loving this. Tell us about your college experience.
So I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. It's the first art school and museum in America. So I had a very traditional foundation in my undergrad program.
What do you mean by that? You had a traditional foundation.
A very Western or European.
Yes.
They had printmaking, sculpture, painting, and drawing. So I took all of these courses and I fell in love with all of them. Later on, when I was in my final year at PAFA, I developed this dialogue of understanding how to create and think of all of these different techniques. And that was good. I have the skills, I have the chops. And then I wanted to talk more about my voice as an artist. And with that, it became a little bit different, because it's one thing to teach a technique, but then when it comes to, the context of your work. I loved PAFA, but there wasn't a very diverse staff or professors. Most of my professors were Caucasian males, and they had taught me so much, and there was such good energy and such good love, between myself and the professors and the staff. But when it came to my context as a Black woman trying to create a voice, we weren't really meeting each other. And then it was a little bit awkward at times where I felt like, okay, I don't think I could get the critique conceptually the way I would like it to go. And I got a lot of feedback that my work was like Kara Walker at the time, which I was like, that was all my professors and critiques would say that. So work is amazing, but it was I didn't feel my work was in relation. I didn't have the same subject matter about race and race in America.
Is it worthwhile going to school?
For me, yes. My time at PAFA, I wouldn't change it for the world. I learned so much. And again, so much, even from what I didn't learn, I end up learning a lot as well.
Where's the furthest you've gone to learn something?
I went to the Awagami Factory in Japan in 2018, and that was an amazing opportunity. I was making paper. And one of the reasons I started making paper was because I went to PAFA to do sculpture. And then I did my first bronze casting. And I was like, whoa, this is not only expensive, but a little dangerous. So I discovered paper casting and paper making. And I ended up really falling in love with making papers and fibers. And I read books there's this one author, Arnold Grummer. And then I wanted to learn more of where paper comes from China. Mm-hmm. And then Japanese paper is like most archival. Right. So I wanted to learn from the source. So when I went to Japan for paper making, it was an international class of about 26 people from all over the world, people from China, people from Europe. And we learned traditional paper making from the bark all the way to the sheet of paper. So this is washi, which is Japanese paper.
How do you define yourself today?
I work on self-portrait figures that are cast, sometimes in paper, sometimes in plaster. And they're really just cast of my body, the form of my body and my identity, and like going back and forth between something tangible and something intangible. When it comes to my 2D work, I'm doing mixed media portraits of my ancestors. I have a daughter, and when the pandemic hit, she is still a baby, and the world is crazy, and I'm a mother, and all of that comes with being a mother, of being fearful of something tragic, So I created a lot of work with my relationship with her, breastfeeding her, covering her, protecting her. That was a time where no one wanted to leave the house. And just being like in a blanket felt very protective. So I did a series on our relationship, and that led me to think about my mother and my mother's mother, and so on and so on. Currently, I'm working on a series of mixed media portraits talking about my ancestors, because I want my daughter, who, again, born in America, is being raised in America currently, to kind of have a record of the people who came before her.
There's a color that keeps popping up in your work that beautiful cobalt blue that you're using.
When I was doing these portraits of myself, I started to use another color of how I felt at the time. I felt like water, when I was carrying my child, and that carried into, when I'm breastfeeding her. And again, so water is life. We need we need everything to survive off water. And then I was thinking of how I could represent that color. From the color, it became the meaning of life for me, and I continue that in my current work.
Have you had opportunities to teach art and share?
Far back as PAFA, I was a teaching assistant for a painting professor. Definitely set the foundation work for me being a teacher. I also had opportunities with John Gregg to do a papermaking workshop for the freshmen at PAFA. So after PAFA, I was in Fort Lauderdale and I saw that there were opportunities for artists to teach workshops. And I was like, okay, I'll do this as a source of income as art. This is amazing. I could do this my entire life. So at the Broward Art Guild had an opportunity to teach a class, and I decided to do papermaking. And that was my first independent workshop that I taught to the community. And it was amazing. I loved it. Then I just ended up going into education departments in museums. So I ended up at the Young Art Museum. I was the outreach program manager for them, creating art lessons and art techniques for ages 6 through 13 in Broward County. And that was an amazing opportunity because I got to work with the school board. So from there, I ended up at the Norton Museum of Art as a teaching artist, creating curriculums for the community. I was at 2 sites. There was Kings Park's Community Center and PAL, which is the Police Athletic League. And this is preteens that it was chilling because I didn't have somebody that looked like me talking about art or teaching art. So I took the role very seriously and showing them artists I wish I saw and artists where we get to see ourselves in art.
When I met you, what impressed me the most was your clarity. You were so clear on looking at your ancestors. You were so clear that another generation would not have the void of not knowing who their ancestors are. And the collage you were doing, the patterns that you had on the wall, and your color palette. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity last year to do my first residency program at the Bakehouse Art Complex. And this was their summer program, which I think, oh my goodness, the opportunities it has led to has been amazing, including me meeting the amazing Rosie Gordon-Wallace that I'm here talking to. And I believe I was one of 12 artists that came in for 12 weeks where we had access to the facilities. We had a communal space where we had to create art. We had curators come in and visiting us and talking. We also had artists that were more full-time at the Bakehouse. We had so much conversation with those artists and to see practicing artists in different stages of their career and learning from them. To be in a group of 60 artists, everyone's doing something different. I learned so much, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity and that program. It was amazing.
What's next?
What's next is that I'm going to keep creating and finding my voice. I'm talking about my culture, my ancestors, not only just for me, but for my daughter and for future generations.
When I look at your work is a story. How would you explain the narrative of your work?
When I'm creating these portraits, it's like these full circle moments where when I was in Jamaica with my grandparents, I was a child. I am, as an artist, reliving and reimagining these child views, the child gaze and the child wonder. When you're looking at the world and you're looking at your elders and you never feel like they're going to leave. They're going to be there forever. And I still feel like as an adult, even though they're not physically on display, they're there forever. It's this sense of, I'm looking at them as these spiritual beings as a child. They know so much, the wisdom, the lifestyle, that they know everything. So to kind of have this moment where I'm revisiting that as an adult, I think this series is because I have a child.
When you show us your ancestors, your grandparents, why should we care? You're showing me your past. Are you concerned that the audience may not get it? Does that matter?
As an artist right now, I'm talking about myself and my lineage to understand myself in order to talk about something bigger. Currently, I'm focusing more on finding my voice and my identity. So it's really a conversation I'm having with myself and thinking about my daughter and thinking about everyone's daughter, everyone's child. I do want people to look at my work and feel related. And so far, a lot of people are like, yeah, this reminds me of my grandmother on the porch. And they're telling me stories of their grandparents and what that meant to them, that different generation.
What is the legacy you hope to create?
As an artist and, the work I produce and how I want it to be seen, I think of my great-grandmother, that feeling of feeling loved, feeling seen. I haven't really just think about from the Caribbean diaspora, but for everyone to see themselves reflected in my work. I want them to be seen and that their stories matter and that it is precious and that it is beautiful.
This was an Art of Black Miami podcast sponsored by the Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau. I am Rosie Gordon-Wallace. We recorded this conversation in the historic neighborhood of Little Haiti, a mecca for Black art and culture. Art of Black Miami highlights the year-round art and culture scene in Miami's heritage neighborhoods and across communities in Greater Miami and Miami Beach. If you are enjoying our stories, visit artofblackmiami.com to learn more. Engage us on social media, post and share using the hashtag #ArtofBlackMiami. The Greater Miami Convention and Visitors Bureau is an accredited, independent, not-for-profit sales and marketing organization. GMCVB's mission is to attract visitors to Greater Miami and Miami Beach for leisure, business, and conventions. For up-to-date art events, promotions, and more information, visit artofblackmiami.com.